Hey, everybody, this is Once More and Again, as my people would say. Once more and again. We're here, right here, doing what it is that God is, I believe, gifted us to do and called us to do in this time, is to be in conversation with some of my friends and people that I know, folk that I think are some of the brightest, smartest, most impactful scholars and activists and theologians and lay folk who are on fire, right? Taking a beat and a note from y'all who know me know I love me some Howard Thurman, who said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and do that. Because what the world needs is for you to catch on fire. They need you to come alive and go do that. That's what's going to change the world. And so here we are again with yours truly, me, Bishop John Selders, and tonight is no different than any other Monday night. If you're watching us live, and if you're watching us after the fact, share it to a friend. By the way, before I get too caught up in the conversation, go ahead and like us, heart us, subscribe to, do the stuff you're supposed to do on YouTube, because we're on YouTube and we're on all the social socials. Let's call it socials, because we might be somewhere anywhere. Socials, right? And listen, I have from afar and from a distance for quite some time watched the trajectory of this, our friend, our sister, for some time. And I've had, there are folk when you meet, ooh, one, they fire, but two, it's like you've known them all your life. It's like you've been around them. It's like there's a connection, a kinship that can't be, it's not understood humanly. It's a spiritual thing. You know that phrase. It's a something thing. You just don't understand it. But it's a family thing. You just don't understand. And we got to spend some time earlier this year, some extended time, and just kikiing and cackling and carrying on something fabulous, and then come to know she's working with some people that I love, some friends of mine, and some family folk. And I was like, okay, I got to get you on. And who knew she was going to be done dropped a book, done released a new book. So now I got a reason to talk to her, right? Wink, wink. But let me be formal just for a moment. this sister, got all the credentials you need, went to the school and I'm sorry, went to school and, got a master's degree from Candler and then went on, got a PhD from Southern Mississippi. I ain't gonna hate on it because she was down there in Mississippi because my people from Southern Mississippi, so that's some home for me. And has a bachelor's degree from Millsap College. She's originally ordained a Methodist preacher and has pastored and carrying on. Now she's received her Episcopal orders from the Methodist Church, the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, and for some time she's the wife of one husband. You got to say that these days. Anyway, but all of that aside, she's taught us some very, very special places. But these days, she hails from the Methodist Theological School in Ohio. And she is the associate dean of that institution. Our sister and friend, and we got to get her on this show as well. Dean and vice president of that school, Valerie Bridgman, Dr. Valerie Bridgman. But let me invite into the platform. Let me get through with all this introducing, and invite our sister and friend, Dean Dr. Lisa Allen-McLaurin, to this platform. Come on in the room and greet the peoples.
Well, hello to everyone. Bishop, it's so good to see you. And
Absolutely.
it's wonderful to see everyone that's on. It's a delight to be here. And yes, we are with the peoples.
We're with the peoples. We're with the peoples. Listen. We are as we are talking tonight in real time. We're at the end of September 2025. And can I say these are some unprecedented times in many ways. When we think about the journey of the African and the journey of the African throughout the diaspora. Now I'm not like some that only begins the journey, with that little the Mayaffa and the enslavement period. I don't begin my the journey of the African there. I begin the journey of the African back to our beginnings as a human race.
Yes.
Isn't it interesting? They found the oldest bones in the Great Rift Valley, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And they call her Lucy. She's the mother of everybody.
That's right.
That's how they say that where I'm from. Everybody. And so our journey begins there. And I want to talk a little bit. Your book kind of traces this journey of the church, in particular, the traditions of faith we would call our home base, but not so much, because there's such the interweaving who we were and who we are as African peoples of the diaspora, kind of weaves itself through and in all of the different traditions that we come from religiously, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that. But as we begin this conversation, let's talk a little bit about your roots. I tell people all the time, I'm third generation classically trained Pentecostal preacher. I get it right. My grandmama was the musician. As I was telling you earlier, they used to call her, when I grew up, they call my grandmother the pianister. Some of y'all don't know where I'm at. Some of y'all don't even know what I'm talking about. But she was called the pianister. We're so glad for Mother Selders as Abba pianister. And because she could Abba pianister. And so, and the preacher that I am was my grandfather. So I start there, and I never shall forget my incoming roots is through the tradition of the Black tradition, Protestant Black tradition, with a whole lot of Africanism in the midst of that. talk a little bit about your journey,
Absolutely.
Doc.
Well, I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi. That is my hometown. And my mother was Baptist, and my father was United Methodist.
Hmm.
But he didn't go to church regularly because he said those crooks wasn't getting his money. He lived long enough to see me become one of those one of those he called the crooks.
One of them
The the,
crooks.
the preachers. He was very devout though. He was very devout. But he told my mother that the Baptist church at that time, he said, you all have way more for children than we do. He said, so take her on to church because that's what we were going to do. We were going every week, my mother and I, every Sunday, all day. Because growing up, you not only went to church, you went to Sunday school. And then you went and got something to eat, or they might have had, food at the church. And then you came back for Baptist Training Union, honey. BTU, or back in the old days it was BYPU, Baptist Young People's Union. And pastor he's still living. He's a pastor emeritus now, the Reverend Marcel Buckley Senior. And my church is Cade Chapel Missionary Baptist Church, 1000 West Ridgeway Street, Jackson, Mississippi, 39213. You had to say the whole thing like a Tribe Called Quest. And one of his sons, Dr. Reginald Buckley, Reverend Dr. Reginald Buckley, is now the pastor. Has followed in his father's footsteps, and Reggie, as I call him, when we just the children who grew up together. Uh, we grew up in the church, um, singing in the children's choir, the youth choir, and then I started playing for Sunday school when I was 9, and church when I was 12, and accompanying choirs there, and so deeply rooted in the Black Baptist tradition, but also there was a kind of ecumenicity there because I was a pianister, and so would go and play. We would go to sing at other churches. Members of my family were part of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I had members of my family who were part of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. The you other churches, Protestant churches there. So I got a lot of um, experience playing in all of these different church traditions, and that is what has shaped and formed me. And in my home church, we sang all the genres of music. We sang spirituals, anthems, gospels, hymns, line hymns. So uh, very, very well shaped and formed in that tradition. So that is where I come
Thank you for that. You just made me to remember. My mother is from Waynesboro, Mississippi,
from.
and
Waynesboro. Yeah.
uh-huh, and ain't too far from Jackson.
Mhm.
About 100 and so miles or so from Jackson, as they call it. And
Yeah, that's right.
you made me to remember my mother's mother. Her brother. She had a brother who was a musician and a singer, and he was Johns Robinson is his name, Uncle Johns, and
Mhm.
he had a tradition, and they would have these these musicals, I guess you call them, these song services, and they
Mhm.
would sing. songs, they would say do say do si do fa ti da, and they were singing shaped what is now called shape note
Shape
singing.
note singer. Hmm. Yeah.
And you just made I just had a flash of shape note singing.
Yeah.
um, and then I then scroll. Then, as you know how your brain do it, you go through a couple of other things, and I remembered, "Love the Lord, you heard my cry."
Hmm.
Doctor, good old line hymn, Doctor Watts in particular.
Watts. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
right. And and I tell you what, and you mentioned this in your book. So let me there we go. Look, hello.
Hello.
All right, there we go. The devil is a lie. It just gonna yeah. We gonna keep it moving just like and nothing just happened, right?
Amen.
Um, the internet's the interwebs is acting up. Is acting
They
up, but
do. You know they
they
do.
do what it do, and you just go with the flow. But let me do this formally. You just dropped a book, just released a book called "Over My Head: The Power of Ancestral Music to Future the Black Church,"
Hmm.
and I'm pleased to lift it up. It's a Cascade book press and just hot. These pages, they ain't. It's still warm. It's still warm in my hand.
Yeah, it is hot off the press.
It's just hot off the press. But you named something here in this book that I want to start our conversation about the book in this way. You talk about what I have heard a lot as a musician as well. When I think about, isn't it a shame that the music traditions that we, when I say we, I'm really speaking of Black folk in particular, that we authored, we don't know how to play them anymore. The spirituals and the blues, other folks know how to play it and sing it better than we do, it seems
Yeah.
at times. And they're mimicking or copying, and sometimes they do a good job. They really good.
Hmm.
And yet there ain't nothing like, a good old line hymn
Hmm.
or a metered Dr. Watts hymn when it's in its authentic setting, right? And I'll tell you something that I'm fascinated with, and then I want you to respond to this. I When I'm listening to um, choirs or large groups of people sing in Africa,
Hmm.
the sound that they produce is the sound of my familiar. It's
Hmm.
the sound of that I heard the Yes Lord praise, if you
Hmm.
will, in a church God in Christ setting, or in an apostolic Pentecostal setting. There shall be light in the evening
Hmm.
time, right? That 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 sound that I hear is a familiar sound in Africa or in the Caribbeans or in Central or South America. It's the same sound. It's
Hmm.
familiar to me, and 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 I believe, like you, I think that if we don't sing them, if we don't recover them and perform them, they'll get lost to us. And in this time where they're burning books and they don't want our histories, to be known, it's a valuable thing to at least remember and begin to remember where we've come from. Uh,
Absolutely.
Respond
Um,
and react to that.
that sound that you're referring to is the ancestral sound uh, of our African ancestors. Um, when our ancestors created music on the continent, they did so uh, with chants and rhythms that uh, were ubiquitous across the countries, across the tribes, across the nations on the continent. If you read the work of John Mbiti uh, and Malidoma Somé and others, they will tell you that while there are um, unique uh, characterizations across various tribes, nations, countries, there are also many, many commonalities. And one of those commonalities is the sound of our music. And so when we were brought to North American shores, South American shores, Caribbean shores, we brought that sound with us, and it permeated the brush arbors, the hush arbors, the churches that sprang up when we began to be allowed to have worship on our own. Uh, they permeated the early churches of the early denominations, or the early churches of the historically black denominations. They permeated the churches of the free will churches of uh, Pentecostal, apostolic, holiness traditions, uh, and they're with us today. We just don't sing them as much because we have made ourselves familiar with another sound. We have we have brought in another tune. We have brought in another way, uh, and in some sense, we have abandoned our ancestral sound, which is why, in part, I wrote the book to help people know how to. If you're interested in why we need to still sing spirituals, still sing hymns, still sing line uh, still sing gospels, traditional gospels, contemporary gospels. I wrote the book so you could have some practical ways of knowing how to do that, but also to then talk about uh, how this music can help covering and uncovering it can help us recover these spiritual technologies that are embedded in this music.
Well, you talk about in the book, you talk about that music in particular was employed in at least three different kinds of ways, large ways. You talk about it, as far as work is concerned. You talk about it as far as ritual is concerned, and then you talk about music being employed as a device to entertain, in a performative way. And I think in each of these settings, in each of these places, and you made me laugh because I talk about conjuring too.
Yes,
and,
yes,
and as a way of summoning or beckoning spirit to
yes.
presence with us. I mean, and don't get it twisted. We got the spirit of the living God fall fresh or fall afresh on
Hmm.
me, on us.
Hmm.
That is as much Christian as it is anything else in our
Hmm.
contexting. That music is that through line, quite
Yes.
frankly, the way we, and I would say in a ritualistic way, that we there's some stuff they would say it like this. The devil don't know what you're saying if you moan,
If you
and so you would
moan, that's it.
you would moan a line.
That's it.
Um, you
That's
know,
it.
in this, you used a term that I hadn't heard used in a long time. Uh, um, oh, Okay, brain work. You lay, what is it?
Ululation.
Ululation. I
And
had.
it's some say ululation,
Hmm.
ululation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
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 Yes.
Tell us what
Yes.
it mean now. Tell it what it mean. Tell us what it mean.
Well, it's a way that the voice works to produce a particular kind of sound, uh, a resonated, a resonant, um, uh, how can I say, bubbling up, sounding up, uh, out of the inner being of oneself. Uh, it's not necessarily a pretty sound, as one would think of when one is producing pitch, but it's a spirit filled, uh, resonant, uh, uh, produced sound that expresses many things. Joy can express pain. It can express longing. It comes up out of the spirit, the soul of a person. Uh, you know, and it can be a singular voice. It can be a collective voice. So yeah.
See, so in my tradition and coming from my tradition,
Hmm.
it was always understood, you know, we had folk who could sing, or folk who could sing.
Dang.
Right, right. And then we had folk who just loved to make music or make melody
Hmm.
in their hearts and out
Hmm.
their mouth or with their hands and feet. So, I mean, I had a mother that played the spoons in our
Right,
church or played the washboard.
right,
Or we all grew up beating a tambourine.
right.
And you can't have no Pentecostal church without a tambourine and some
No,
drums, right?
that's right.
Some of us didn't have no money to buy the Hammond organ.
That's
So,
right.
it was some foot stomping and somebody beating a tambourine or a washboard. And I think back to those days for me. I mean, I'm a product of the 1960s. I grew up in the 1960s and 70s. So I have these fond memories of storefront church. and
Hmm.
and and even when we moved from storefront church to a building, and we had nice fine thing. you know it was something. They said, let's go back and
Right,
capture what we used to have when we was in the old
right,
building, or we was at the
right.
old church, because there was something very soul heart connected in
Hmm.
the way we approached um, the music making, but I want to say the the setting of communal experience. All right, and,
Hmm.
in a very churchy Christian kind of way, we call that worship. But I've heard that, I felt that same thing in the midst of the sisters and brothers at the mosque, when they are when
Yeah,
they are
right,
singing when they're singing the Quran. Or I felt that in the synagogue, when the
right,
cantor is leading the singing, and they're singing the prayers,
right,
and the scriptures in,
right.
in in a Jewish context. And I've certainly experienced it when I've been in sacred ceremony with our native sisters and brothers, and when they're making, in those sacred ceremony, they're beating the drum, right,
Hmm.
representing the heartbeat. And it ain't that old fake Hollywood doom 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 doom.
Oh
That's some old
no,
Hollywood.
no.
That's some Hollywood.
Yeah,
It's just a
yeah.
straight drum. It's a straight beat,
Yep.
and the heart beats straight, just like that. And
Right.
it's in the context of it, they then make these sounds using both of these kind of articulations, these guttural sounds.
Right.
And you hear it in indigenous music making and communal experiences in other traditions. I'm fascinated with that stuff. I'm fascinated because there's something that's connected to it that's, again, very familiar to me.
Hmm.
While I may not know the words, throughout the African diaspora in particular, because of because of colonization, we speak different languages. You and I are talking right here now in English, but our people are from very close together, and we could have very easily been speaking French.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right.
With the deep Southern Mississippi roots we have. Um,
Hmm.
but for me, the experience of those moments, even if I don't know the actual articulation of the words and language, I know what's happening, right?
Right, right. Well, you said something when you said that in on the continent, people are they're singing. Um, there's I don't think anybody is excluded from singing, whether you have the best voice or decent voice, or you can't carry a tune in a bucket. You're part of the community, so you sing. We singing. Everybody sings, and yes, primarily those three contexts you have. You have songs for work. You have songs for ritual, or music for work, music for ritual, and you have song and music for recreational. And now you do have some. Professional musicians on the continent, of course. There are some that are professional, but that is not to the exclusion of the everyday person who sings. I mean, uh, I haven't visited many countries in on the continent, but I have been to a few, and everywhere I've been, everybody's singing. I mean, it's not an exaggeration. Music permeates the air. It permeates the air. Whether it's vocal music, whether it's instrumental music, it's ubiquitous on the continent. It's everywhere all the time. Because everybody knows that they are welcome to produce whatever music they choose to produce, uh, which is another thing that has used to be in our communities here, where people wanted to sing, so they sang in the choirs at church. Uh, Now, for better for worse, everything is production. It's got to be glossy. That's my thing now. Everything got to be glossy. Because because we have been uh, conditioned to think that uh, worship is for us, that is supposed to be pleasing to us, to the uh, congregants. Uh, it's supposed to make us feel good. It's supposed to do something for us, and I mean it does. But that's not the primary reason we worship. Uh, that's not the primary audience. God is the primary audience. But because we live in a consumerist culture, then we think everything is for our consumption. And so if it doesn't sound to us like what we heard at somebody else's church on the radio, on television, um, if it's not all the bells and whistles, uh, we feel like it's less than. Um, but that's not what the Word of God says. The Word of God says make a joyful noise. Come before God's presence with singing.
Yeah. So here's something I think about a lot. Um, and I thought about it so much so that I had a couple of assumptions. um, and was able to raise a few dollars and go to Central America, down South America, and then to the Caribbeans.
Mhm.
Here was my assumption that protest music sung here in the United States, and I'm referencing in a particular time. So I'm talking the modern day civil rights movement, right? In
Mhm.
1950s, 60s,
Mhm.
and the golden age, if you will.
Mhm.
And there are songs that were sung during that time. We Shall Overcome comes to mind, right? Uh,
Mhm.
uh, that was sung that everybody sang, right?
Right.
It didn't matter. It was a song not sung in church. It was a song sung in gatherings, out on the street, out on the
Mhm.
block, in large gatherings or small gatherings. And so I made an assumption. I say, is there music that was shared in the context that were both spiritual music, some would say religious music, that were sung in other contexts in a similar fashion, right?
Mhm.
Did resistance carry music in it? Okay, right. These are my, and I said in other places throughout the diaspora, I should be able to find it, right?
Mhm.
And of course, I did, right? And
Mhm.
I knew I was asking a question with some answers I thought I could surface. But for example, in Brazil, the music that is sung while dancers are dancing capoeira, which is
Yeah.
the fighting. It's a dance art now, but the kick fighting tradition in Brazil. It
Mhm.
are the music sung in the traditions of the Orishas and their spiritual traditions. In fact, many people doing the practice of capoeira don't actually know that this is the same stuff done over here, but they know when they're drumming and singing and they're doing the moves, they all work in concert with one another. Found
Mhm.
there's in Trinidad and Tobago, there is a stick fighting tradition in
Mhm.
much the same way as the kick fighting tradition is in Brazil. Guess what they're saying? The songs that they sing are the songs that are sung in the Orisha tradition
Mhm.
of spiritual Baptist.
Mhm.
Historically. And I was floored by the sound again and the tone and what that singing invoked in both the participants, those who were actually practicing the tradition of stick fighting or kickboxing in the Brazilian context, and what it used to be, what it has been for us here in the United States, and in particular in the South. That music conveyed a kind of spiritual reservoir
Mhm.
by which resistance and the tradition of resistance in in part enabled and buoyanced us, while we were in the heat of the day, if you
Mhm.
understand my metaphor. Could
Mhm.
you say a bit more about how that works within the context of this music that you're representing?
Yeah. So wherever you're gonna see um African and African descended peoples uh worshiping, having ritual, being present, you are going to hear some strands of resistance because that's one of the major themes of worship, along with survival, along with deliverance and liberation, along with affirmation and joy. Those four themes uh, infuse, permeate every aspect of our lives, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we want to, agree with it or not. Uh, for peoples who have historically sought to be free, um, to stay free, to get free, to resist colonization, to resist oppression, there's going to always be that sound of resistance, that strand of resistance. And so the music is going to have that same tenor. Um, if you listen to uh, resistance music uh, from South America, if you listen to resistance music from the Caribbean, from Cuba, from um, uh, uh, the southern United States, you're going to hear that pentatonic scale. That's Africa. You can't get away from it. You're going to hear those flatted fifths and sevenths. You're going to hear that kind of um, going, how can I say, um, weaving through uh, between major and minor chords, keys, uh, pitches, bending, note bending, uh, which is again a signal of our strength. Because if we can bend the note, then we can bend the situation. We can bend the chord, then we can bend and manipulate what is happening in our world. Uh, and it represents how we live between the major and the minor, how we live between hope and despair, how we live between joy and sorrow, which we know are two sides of the same coin. And it's life. That's life. And so this is why our ancestors, uh, they didn't often talk about being tired of fighting the way I think I hear people say now. Oh, I'm so tired of this. Oh, I'm so tired. And I've said it myself. I'm so tired of this. We didn't really, there's not really a whole lot of that I read historical accounts about them saying they were tired because what they recognized was there is a time to fight, there is a time to rest. And when I am fighting, someone else is resting, and then when it's time for me to rest, someone else is fighting. So the fight continues. Um, when I am sorrowful, somebody in my community is joyful. When I'm joyful, somebody may be sad that I need to come then and bring a presence of joy. When someone else is in the midst of distress, I may be peaceful and bring a sense of peace to their distress. Or they bring a sense of awareness to me. You understand what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Uh, you're going to hear that in any context, nation, tribe, community, society, uh, where there is oppression, where there is an attempt to keep people from living into the fullness of who they are. Because we are always seeking liberation. We are always seeking um, to be in the fullness of ourselves.
Mhm.
And
I
the music is the is part of the spiritual technology that we use to affect this.
Mhm. So I'm reminded our ancestors would do a thing. So we weren't bound by the written word so much in our singing and in our storytelling. We were framing our experience, both our lived realities and also our hopes, our wishes. You talk about futurism in the book that fascinates me, and that's a I gotta have you come back and we just spend some time talking about what that means in a religious context and in particular a Black religious context. But so it used to, at a point I never did question it, but then I started going to school and I started questioning, right? So there's a song I grew up listening to and hearing. Oh Mary, don't you weep.
Yes.
Tell Martha not to
Martha,
moan,
not to moan. Hmm.
right? Oh Mary, don't you weep.
Hmm.
Tell Martha not to
Hmm.
moan. Then, because Pharaoh got drowned in the Red Sea.
Yes.
And so the song is referencing a gospel moment, right, with Mary and Martha, who were the sisters of Lazarus, who we know in the gospel narrative, Jesus's friend. Jesus would visit them all the time, and Lazarus dies, and Mary and Martha were sending for Jesus. Jesus didn't show up until after
That's
Lazarus
it.
died. They had done his funeral. He was already in the tomb,
That's
and Jesus wept. The shortest scripture in the Bible. That I used to say it
right.
well. We'd have to repeat a
Yeah.
scripture verse around the table for our grace. Little words
Yeah.
of prayer. And I say, Jesus wept. Thought I was doing something. Anyway, this story goes from that particular biblical narrative and then jumps back to Moses, and them crossing the Red Sea. The usage of these stories and narratives didn't have to necessarily fit within the stories that are told out of the written text. These were their lived reality. They were pouring, we are climbing Jacob's ladder, right? Soldiers of
Hmm.
the cross. Right.
Right.
So to your point that these stories, these are singing this music, and I would say even as important as the stories and the music was what was being poured into that, the spirit in a communal way that was communicating something deep from within the very soul of both the individual, but also the individuals, the group of them.
Hmm.
I think about the ring dance as
Hmm.
another way in which, right now, there's a way in which you go to. I tell people who don't understand this, watch the Blues Brothers. You'll get a glimpse. If you see the movie The Blues Brothers with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, they get a call from God to put the band together, right?
Hmm.
And they go to a church that's pastored by James Brown.
Yep.
and so the storytelling in that movie is just fantastic. But
It is.
they have that call religious experience, and all of a sudden Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, they flipping down the aisle, right? And I know that while that was an entertainment and a movie, I know that scene, I know that story. What they were
Hmm.
doing was in a kind of authentic way. Funny, it's a comedy, it's a movie. So it was meant to entertain. They were
Hmm.
actually, I think, being very true to a particular kind of tradition that
Hmm.
in the midst of, so when we were talking about worship, what happens is when we're doing this thing in a kind of transcendence appears. And it's in that kind of mystical moment. Um, uh, Somebody said something like, I don't know who it was, it says, music in that context becomes then magic.
Mm.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Right? As to say, there's a moment in which things flip, that the script flips, right? And so to sing How I Got Over Mahalia Jackson on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, right? During the March on Washington in 1963, or to have Peter, Paul, and Mary sing, how many times must a man fall down? Right, right, right. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. Right.
Mhm.
To have that spirit be summoned for that moment, so that Martin could say, "I had a dream today," right?
Mhm.
And arguably one of the best public speech any American has ever articulated, right? In that moment,
Mhm.
in that right there, in that moment, it is. In our last few minutes, we got just a few more minutes. Let's talk about today. We have we're living in these times that we're living in, right? And in these conversations I've been having about these moral times, what's the sound, Dr. Lisa? What's the sound that you're hearing, um, that we can kind of connect to, and then begin to articulate, in summoning this moment? I can say the civil rights movement. There are a couple of tunes that we can go and reach and know they were through lines for us, like a "We
Mhm.
Shall Overcome." I
Mhm.
can tell you during the Black Lives Matter 1.0, I can
Mhm.
tell you there were a couple of songs. Um, uh, uh, Kendrick Lamar dropped a song, "We Gonna Be All Right," kind of moved us in a particular kind of way. Or
Mhm.
Janae Monet and her song, what's it, with the drums? Hell you talking about? Hell you talking about? Yeah, those were
Yeah.
that had a particular resonance and a sound and a tone. What 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 could we be pulling on now?
I think we need to be pulling on what we've been pulling on. Um, I I I don't think there's anything out of order with pulling on. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Um, Keep your hand on the plow.
And hold
Hold
on.
on. Um, Hold on just a little while longer. Everything gonna be all right. Um, and songs of Sweet Honey in the Rock. Uh, you know, that that speak to speak to the times that have not changed. Um, and not to say there isn't room for any new music. There's always room. But it still needs to be grounded in that ancestral side. I think when we abandon um our son, and see that's the thing. I feel like sometimes we are tempted to abandon our ancestral legacies in ways that other people are not. I think sometimes African descended peoples across the diaspora were tempted to take on something, that may not inherently be ours.
Mhm.
Uh, which is not to say whatever you're taking on doesn't have a worth, but that is not to negate the worth of your own ancestral sin. Uh, and we know that the legacy of enslavement, the legacy of demonization of Africa and anything African has you know done its damage to our communities, to our lived experiences. But that's why reading history is so important, because you find that that was intentional campaign to weaken the and the Africans' descendants, to make them believe that everything of yours is nothing, is no good, is less than. And so, why shouldn't we recover line hymns uh, to say uh, that I know I am a child of God. Although I move so slow, I'll wait until the Spirit comes and move at God's command. That still sings good. Uh, uh, to say, done made my vow to the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go to see what the end's gonna be. Uh, or I am a poor pilgrim of sorrow. I'm left in this wide world alone. I've heard of sin, and I'm trying to my home. Sometimes I'm tossed and I'm driven on. Sometimes I don't know where to roam, but I've heard of a city called, and I'm trying to make it my home. That's still our music. That still tells us. Um, and if you need to put another kind of beat to it, another kind of, you know,
Yeah,
something under it, uh, it still means something. Uh,
yeah,
and again, that is not to the exclusion of other melodies and pitches, songs uh, that have that same kind of power, that same kind of power uh, that move us, propel us forward through this thing called life.
yeah. We have a mutual friend, um, and all I got to do is say, "Come, thou fount of every blessing," and we just go in. We just go in
Yes,
because
yes,
right because for me as I'm a church boy, and let me just be
yeah,
clear.
yeah,
And so you sing a yes, Lord, praise, my hand go in the air, or
yeah,
or you sing you know Jesus keep me near the
yes,
cross. Well, I'm gonna go in because that's the stuff that the old people say, that I now know what they were singing about, right? That
Right.
my mama would rub her hands together and get happy, right? Um, so songs that have meaning way beyond just the religious experience. And I'm not taking that nothing short of that, but she'd get happy at home. She'd get
Yeah.
happy in the car. Uh,
Absolutely.
right, that these were songs and tones and touches that were
Yeah.
meaningful in her whole life, right?
Yeah.
Not just the Sunday life, but in the Wednesday afternoon hump day life. Oh, I
Right.
feel a little preachment coming on me now. I feel just a little bit of preachment going on. But I am pleased that we got a chance to talk for just a it's not now. I'm going to ask you on these airwaves to promise to come back soon.
I will do it.
I want to get down deeper into this. I want to talk about the future that you represent in the book that I find is a fascinating opportunity for us to talk about. You hear a lot about Black Afrofuturism and all the, if you're in the, if you know, right? But
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to, it's very interesting. And I love the way you started your book. You started your book saying a couple of things, that you weren't necessarily into sci-fi, but that you loved music, Black music in particular, and you loved the church.
Hmm.
Well, I resonate with two of those three, music and the church. I did. Me and Star Trek was like, yeah, we was
Oh,
on it, right?
all right.
And so I'm a Trekkie from the very beginning. Captain
Oh,
James Kirk and William Shatner. He won't ever be not James T. Kirk, right?
all right. All
And
right.
Leonard Nimoy being Mr. Spock, right?
Yeah.
And the lessons of Gene Roddenberry that he was trying to bring to the world. I think that in many ways, our music has done the same thing. Tried to reach into where our past and where we are present, and then propel us into our future. And I think that's part of what you're naming in this moment, that we have, I like that you use the term Sankofian, right? That we have this Sankofa-esque way we can look back, but then press forward into what it is, our future. I believe that it's in this moment that who we and how we have been in the past informs us of who we and what we're going to be into our future. And we got to do that, not depending on exteriors. I
Hmm.
pray that the government do what's right, but they may not.
Right.
I hope that some other folk treat you right, because you've treated other folk right. I hope they do, but they may not. But Lord knows we better love on ourselves and treat ourselves, with the kind of love, regard, and respect and care, because we're gonna need ourselves. We're gonna need each other in these moments. Our salvation is in us, right? And
I
so
say.
I say, Dr. Lisa Allen-McLaurin, thank you very much for being here, for having it be, for you writing the book. And let me just say it again, over my head. Here the book is. Over my head. Let me get it right over my head. Y'all go out and buy this book. It's a great conversation about music. And let's be clear. Over my head, there's music in the air. Over my head, there's music in the air. Over my head, there's music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. How you hear music in the air that then makes the claim of the divine, and not in the air. Now it's not in my heart or in my, it's in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And so there must be a God here and everywhere, right?
That's right.
We're gonna come back to that right there. We're gonna come back to that right there. That sounded mighty good to me. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
sis. I
thank
appreciate you
you.
very much for coming on and
Appreciate
joining.
you.
All righty. Hey, listen, y'all. We're gonna be back here. Same bat station, same bat time, or maybe not. But again, I'm a child of the 60s. You know, Batman. That was me. That was me. Yes. I appreciate you all. Love you much. And we'll be back at this again to have more relevant conversations. All right. Peace. I say, everybody.
Peace.